Okay, I think we can start today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekend meeting with Sanal Edamaruku. I am Shubhi Sinha, heading the youth wing of Rationalist International. And since you all know that we have linked our Zoom, YouTube, and Clubhouse together, so I welcome you all. And now you can ask questions through any of these platforms. We have Deepthi and her colleagues in Clubhouse who will help us with the question answer process there. So now, moving on, the topic for today is Black Friday. Black Friday is a colloquial term for the Friday following Thanksgiving, and huge discounts everywhere. Christmas is coming, so even people tend to buy a lot when this sale is going on, and there is a huge rush when it comes to buying things. Everything is almost free, 80% off, 90%, buy one, get two free, so many things. So everything is cheap for this week. That's what we know out of Black Friday. But how did it start and what is the history to it? It is another very interesting story. And to give a historical view on this, I would like to welcome Sanal Edamaruku and request him to start with this presentation.
Thank you, Shubhi, and thank you for friends in the Clubhouse. And I hope some people are following us on the YouTube as well. So coming to the primary image of Black Friday is what Shubhi said. It's everything is almost free, 80% off, 40% off, 50% off, and people are rushing. And that's after Thanksgiving Day. In United States, it's one of the biggest marketing festival for people. And one major study says that most of the people imagine that they are buying a lot of things at half the price or less than half the price during this season. And almost 50% of the additional purchases that people make than their day-to-day things are around this time, from this Friday through the next week. And what exactly this would mean? For most of the places where winter is very prevalent, winter comes and all stocks are being sold off. You get exceptionally cheap jackets and other material of the last season, and people are buying it. So you feel that something that would cost 500 euros or $500 would now be available for $50 or $100. And that's how many people feel. There has been a study that very clearly says that 2 million people would additionally go for shopping in United States alone during this season, which means it's a huge market free. In Europe, Australia, Canada, and many other parts of the world where people are buying a lot during the season are really buying a lot. But what exactly they are buying? They're buying their washing machines, they're buying their refrigerators, they are buying their clothes, they are buying a lot of things that are available that may be needed for them, that may not be needed for them. Because everything is cheap, that's what people feel. So there have been a study by the History Channel analyzing about the history of the whole marketing festival that is made all around the world. But before coming to that, there is another very interesting study which analyzes the marketing patterns during the season. Do you know that whatever you buy during the season, 92% of the products that you buy are not actually cheap. They are at the same price you are buying. The marketing strategy all around the world is very simple. The prices are taken up in the last months. It goes up to 50% or 60%. Then suddenly on the Black Friday day, the prices are reduced and you are very happy. There is something that is actually $100 worth, The prices are up to $160 now. And now you would get 40% off and you would still buy for $100 and you are very, very happy about that. And the marketing study very clearly says that, 95% of the total marketing that happens during the Black Friday is actually at the same price, sometimes even at the higher price than it is usual. Still, people are happy. They're buying because they have a feeling that they are buying it for cheap. But marketing festivals are good for not only the shopkeepers, but also for the people who buy, because it's a feel-good atmosphere. You buy something and you want to feel always that you bought it at a very cheap price and you got an excellent product. You are happy and the seller is very happy and the retailer is happy and the wholesaler is happy and the market is simply running. And especially at a time when the pandemic has slowed down the whole market, the entire production line has gone down. And every time when there is a new hope of a new life back as usual again, people are hopeful. The first report that comes from all over the world is that the market is so active already and people are buying and buying. A lot of products that were not selling are simply going. But what exactly is the story behind? How did it all began? That after Thanksgiving Day, and especially before Christmas, Christmas is something like, I can compare with my Indian memory, something like Diwali festival in India. There is a festival of lights in India. It's like you have lights everywhere and people are buying and buying everything possible. And people are happy there. You are buying some gifts and giving to other people, and others are buying gifts and giving to you. And you get a lot of gifts and you give away a lot of gifts. Same thing is happening, as you all know, around Christmas, all around the world, where Christmas is celebrated. And from Black Friday, after Thanksgiving Day, the buying spree begins. And that's where it all goes. But it all began with a bad marketing calculation of somebody some years back. That's how the story goes. It's back in 1869, there was in the US gold market, there was two notoriously ruthless people in the Wall Street, who were Wall Street financiers, Jay Gould and Jim Fisk. They worked together and they decided to buy up the whole national gold, hoping to drive up the price to sky high, and then they would get astonishing profits. That was the plan. Because if they buy and buy, naturally the prices will go up and up and up. But it simply failed because the strategy leaked out. And suddenly the market crashed. They lost all their money, but also a lot of other people. It became a total collapse of the market back in 1869. And that was on a Friday in September. That's the popular story that we all know about the free fall, bankrupting everyone from Wall Street barons to the farmers everywhere. That was the beginning of the Black Friday, as popularly known, and what is reported everywhere. But yet there is another story. But before coming to that, what happened to this marketing spree that began at that time? Because people have been totally out of money and no product will sell because there was no money in the market. So the prices were brought down so that the hopeful merchants, whatever they have stored, should be sold. Otherwise, they won't be able to pay even the suppliers. So they brought the prices down so that at least they would get the cost price. But they could not even get the cost price. So it was a big loss, not only for these notorious two investors, but also for everyone who was hopeful in the stock market and also for a lot of retailers. But it was a lucky thing for the buyers at the lower end. But the problem was many of them did not have money to buy. So the prices simply collapsed. That was a loot. Everybody felt everything is cheap, but there was no money to buy. That was the situation. So I mean, if you look at the marketing atmosphere in New York or in London or in any world capital, people are buying and buying despite the pandemic. And now online buying is thoroughly, I mean, in the full swing. You can buy an Apple iPhone, I mean, the latest version at something like 15% down. Still, it's a big loot, you would feel. But if you check back, the prices available 1 month back, that was something still lower. So that's how things work. But the other side of the story is something really, really tragic. Do you know, back in the 18th century and 19th century, a lot of people from African coasts were caught unexpectedly by the slave traders. In the banks of African seasides, when people have been walking just for their evening happiness, from darkness, people rushed to them, caught them, tied them, and taken them in boats. Not only hundreds, but thousands of them. That was the beginning of the slave trade in a very big way in the modern times. There were slaves earlier also. Slavery is not the innovation of United States of America. You can see traces of slavery very effectively functioning during the Babylonian times. You can see the Egyptian pyramids were raised with the work of the slaves. In Rome, they were slaves. In the war, when you defeated people, the soldiers of the other side were all taken as slaves. Also, people were caught and they were tied up and brought to the capital of the winners as slaves. The Roman Empire was the biggest center of this slave trade. There were slaves who were working and working while others enjoyed their life. They had to work for food. They did not work, they were whipped. They were trained and they were asked to carry things. They were asked to work on things. They were asked to work on the farms. They have been working on everything possible. While if you had more slaves, you are a wealthy person. Your wealth was assessed with the slaves. And all the slaves were just free people, happily living with their own life, hunting, gathering in Africa. They were simply caught. There was a slave trade that was existing beforehand. Amsterdam was the center of the slave trade in Europe. There were slaves coming from the past and their children. And slaves, it was very, very expensive to buy a slave. And there was a movement against slavery in many parts of Europe at that time. And at that time, the new found land that United States is found the necessity of workers and free workers in their farms, in their new development, in their constructions, they wanted workers. And that's where they explored the possibility of slaves. So these slaves were a new set of slaves, not the slaves who were sold in the European market, not the slaves who were coming from Egypt, not the slaves who were part of the past tradition, for example, from the Roman Empire side. You know that during Roman Empire, the slaves were mainly they were working, and everybody felt as a slave very comfortable with their master. Because if you have a master, you don't have to worry about your food. That's what they felt. If you have a master, you'll be protected. That's what they felt. So the slaves were very happy about their slavery. They got food and they got, of course, physical training. And as you know, the slaves, when they have been physically working a lot and eating enough to keep their working done, they were the owners, the masters were worried that they should not be interested in anything else than working. It was to reduce the sexual interest of the slaves that circumcision was started in Egypt. The idea of circumcising a male was the innovation of the Egyptian authorities to reduce the libido of men so that they could concentrate on their work. That was, of course, opposed by the Greek tradition, and especially for the warriors, they had a different idea about the whole thing. So they were only, the masters were only interested in getting their work, and they fed them because only if they feed them, they could work properly. And the new slaves, and eventually slaves started developing a kind of cordiality, a kind of relationship with their master, a kind of slave-master relationship where the slave is very obedient and the master has a kind of moral responsibility to the slave. And with the Roman tradition, a slave can be released if he wins in a fight as a gladiator. And gladiators were practically slaves, trained slaves as soldiers. They would fight against vigorous other people. And those who win in the great war, or the fight with weapons and hands, with the whole Roman citizens would be watching, there would be only one possibility: to kill the opponent. And the city would be celebrating the great fight, like bulls would fight. The slaves would be fighting for their life. Fighting and fighting, and the final victor has an opportunity to buy his freedom. That was the only way to go out. And we have a lot of history available about the Roman slaves and their great fights. In Britain, there were slaves, and there was a movement against slavery going on there. So there was a new need of slaves in the new land of United States. That's where they found one has to go to Africa and get fresh slaves. They've gone in ships, just caught people, like one would trap animals in the forest. They trapped them, caught them, taken them to the ship so that they should not move. They innovated very simple and inexpensive techniques, like a wooden plank would be put on their head and 2 holes for the hands. So they cannot move their hands or the head. They can eat with their hand. It will be from hand to mouth. And some food is provided, and they were kept in several layers in the ship, because each ship has to be filled with the maximum number of slaves to make it economical. Several layers were made. They were not allowed to stand up. If they stand up, there will be less space for more slaves. So they were all allowed to sit down or lie down. Many ships, they were only allowed to lie down because there were layers and layers and layers of slaves taken from the African coast to United States. Imagine that. People who just had a normal life, suddenly from some unexpected place, somebody comes and catch them and take them, bind them. And for several weeks, they are in some ship who they would not have any idea where they're going. And they've gone. And then they reach another continent. Now they have new life. If they refuse to work, if they challenge, they are beaten or killed. They were less than animals in their status of life. Similarly, slaves were taken in other parts of the world also. You know that in South Africa, from many parts of Asia, people were taken, from India, from Nepal, and many other places. People were trapped, like trafficking. They were taken away, and finally they landed up as slaves there. And they have a kind of labor, camps where they have no other way than working or get whipped or get killed. The American slaves, they had the worst life possible in 18th century and early 19th century. When most of the world has been going forward, the French Revolution has happened, and we declared that the great slogans of liberty, equality, and fraternity, as the new slogan of the new world. In Britain, the new clarion call for democracy was already up there. But in United States, on one side, there have been stalwarts like George Washington and Jefferson, who spoke about peace and equality and human rights, but they did not see one side of it, the slavery. The slaves, especially on the southern part of the United States, they had a terrible life. Some of the stories, there are documented evidences now available. Slaves were simply asked to work, and if they refused to work, they would be sometimes cut into pieces in front of other people so that they're scared. Also in some other places, when the colonies were there, this other side of the story, in Africa, in many places, when the colonies were established, the local people have been asked, they were asked to bring them food. Because the wheat was to be produced by them, it should be brought. If the quota is not brought in, most of the time their little children were caught and hanged. And before that, of course, they would pray from the Bible and for the salvation of the boy who will be hanged. And I've seen pictures of young children of 8-9 years being hanged because their parents did not bring enough wheat to the masters. In their own land, in many places, they were made slaves. They were, again, they were controlled, they were made slaves in Africa, in the plantations, and again, from there also people have been taken away. Now these slaves in the United States, they were sold like cattle. There are advertisements available about slaves being sold, and the normal price was from 30 euros to 300 euros. You can buy a little boy or girl of 5-6 years to work, of course, for 30-35 euros. Dollars at that time. There are advertisements available. Or a healthy young man of 35-40 years, you can buy for $200. And these, the number of slaves were increasing and increasing. There were more and more slaves coming and more work going on in the United States. The plantations became very successful. Roads were made and railway lines were made, and the underground, the tube was made, and the slaves worked in all these places. The prosperity of America was built on the sweat and blood of the slaves. The wealth of America is built up on the debris of the lives of the slaves. And there was one time, back in 1920s, there was the Great Depression in the United States. And the work has gone down, and there is a big economic crisis, falls upon the United States. The value of the slaves have gone down. People cannot keep so many slaves. So many people decided to sell off their slaves. And on a September Friday, there have been a meeting of the owners of the slaves. And they decided to sell their slaves at a low price so that it could be, because if you have more slaves and there is less work, you have to provide food for them. And many of these slaves were simply taken and sold off at a very low price. There are advertisements everywhere. The black slaves were sold. The Black Friday was established. That was on a Black Friday. That was called the Black Friday. That's how it actually began. The 1890s, this story has been another, there was a collapse. Later, the kind of material that is available now, you could buy at that time. Many of the American hunters like to hunt alligators. And you need a bait to attract an animal. You could rent out a young boy or girl of 1 year for $2 to be made as a bait to attract alligators. Of course, if the boy or girl is eaten up or killed, they would get a remuneration of $50. Sometimes even that is not given. Imagine children just tied and brought out near a riverbank to attract alligators so that they could shoot the alligators. There were advertisements still available. It's exhibited in museums now. These advertisements which calls for a special price of, 1 day renting of a children to be a bait to be for an alligator for $2. That was the life of a slave in United States those times. They were used as sex slaves sometimes. They were used as just workers. They were used to fight for them. They were used to just be like animals to plow the land with no money, just for food and shelter. Just for food and shelter. And when the prices went down, when the production declined, they wanted to get rid of these unwanted people to the easiest money. That was the Black Friday. Nobody wants to remember about that. No one wants to remember about that. So we dig up a new story. Again, of course, the story of the investors in the Wall Street it's a more interesting story. Looks more dignified. It looks more colorful about an investor trying to buy gold and all these kind of things. Of course, there was a story like that. But the real Black Friday began with the collective sale of the black slaves at that time. There are the special Black Friday announcements. The first Black Friday announcements are still available. When this will be uploaded, I would put some of those advertisements also so that those people who follow it later can see what exactly was that. And this special part of history is conveniently forgotten. You know that when Abraham Lincoln tried to end slavery in the traditional way as it was, he had to argue to win the people that it would be in the best interest of the white people. It would be in the best interest of the masters that they would not revolt much and they have to be given a certain amount of freedom, was the kind of words he had to use to win those people who were opposed to the end of slavery. And that has caused a civil war in the United States of America. When you travel in the tube in the United States, remember that this tube was the creation of the slaves with no money as a payment. And it was for selling them that the great marketing spree now is very, very active all around the world. When you go to a Black Friday market, well, it has nothing to do with that old tradition now. It's just a marketing gimmick and marketing technique. You could enjoy it. But sometimes remember about those days when the people of African origin were treated just like animals or less than animals, and they were sold in the market. But also remember that this was not the case in the United States of America. In Britain, there were slaves. There was an anti-slavery movement in Britain. The liberals have been against the slavery. You can read a lot of old British literature telling that if we did not get them as slaves, their lives would have been completely spoiled, and we have actually helped them to get a better life in the developed part of the world, is the kind of explanation that was sometimes given about slavery. Also, there are books, of course, you can read that colonialism was really good to get the people elevated, that we started, colonialism. These kind of explanations were given at one time. But now the world has moved forward. We don't have to have any grievance about the past. But also one has to remember that in every single part of the world, similar racial discrimination existed, including in Africa. In many parts of Africa, there was racial discrimination between tribes, which even continues now. You know, the very recent conflict between the Hutus and the Tutsis. They've been killing each other just because they consider the other people are bad people. And they wanted to cleanse the world out of these people. So there was hatred in between the African different ethnic groups. There were conflicts in different parts of Africa itself. People are different, people have conflicts, but slavery is nothing to be compared with that. Slavery has been a systematic way of catching people and making them with a professional use and exploiting them without considering their life, without considering their feelings, without considering what they want to have in their life. Just for your welfare, your prosperity, you have simply exploited these people. And it is from there comes the Black Friday tradition. And we can forget about that. We can move ahead. We have to move forward, certainly, in the world. But one should always remember back and look back and should be reminded about that, because we shall not ever repeat this greatest grave misery that we have bestowed upon people of a certain part of the world. As I told you, there was slavery in Britain, and slaves could be purchased in Britain. People could use their work without any payment. And there was a movement to liberate the slaves. It's well known that the slaves did not want liberty. They have been complaining that if they were liberated, they would be helpless. How would they help themselves? And also, if you read the psychology textbooks of 18th century and 19th century, you will find a terminology which is identified as a mental ailment about a slave thinking that he would have a better life if he gets freedom. That was considered an ailment, mental ailment of a slave. So once the liberation movements got more, or the civil rights movements got more power, and when it was decided finally to liberate all slaves in Britain, they did not want them to live in the UK. In a way, they have been given a new land, Liberia, and they were all taken there, and they were allowed to establish their own state there. Liberia is a creation of a new state by the slaves gone from the UK. Well, that's one way of ending slavery. And in UK, slavery was officially, closed down, and they were all liberated. In United States, there was a great social movement. There was a big conflict in which is the Civil War, and at the end of it, slavery is banned. But still, there is a serious public opinion coming from the Black community that they were still oppressed and they are still discriminated against. The kind of social discrimination and economic discrimination that they feel has to be addressed. So this is changing. It has to change. But always remember that there was a time when people were caught, and why they were slaves was not their mistake. Even if it was their mistake, they have the people who owned them had no right to own them. And in many other parts of the world, even now, there are still slaves. In Congo, there are still child laborers. And people who are working in the mines, they were all practically slaves. There was bonded labor in many parts of India. In many inner parts of India, especially the tribal area, we find a lot of people who find it convenient to sell themselves to feel protected, that they get food and work and a place to sleep. Modern day slavery is a phenomenon which is to be addressed and to be handled. I would say that Black Friday is to be remembered as a serious memory about the dark ages that we have cultivated in our past. To remember and to promise ourselves that we would never ever repeat such a thing. And those victims who were coming out of this slavery, were to be addressed, and their dignity of life has to be respected, and they have to be integrated to the mainstream life of the world. And that's the major thought one should have vis-a-vis the Black Friday. That's where I end now. And then we would continue with our discussion, and we would come out to in detail about many things during the discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And just a second. Yeah. Well, on this note, let's move on to the question answer round. And as usual, click on the hand raise tool icon for asking. Try to stick with one question at one person and be as precise as you can. We also have our clubhouse linked, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll take up questions from both the platforms. For the start, right now we have a Zoom user. Please proceed with your question.
My question is, thanks for this description, detailed description. I wasn't aware of all of this, but do you think Black Friday is taken or abolished anywhere, like it should not be called a Black Friday? What's your opinion? Then I have one more question, but I only asked, Shubi told me don't ask more than one. So I'll wait and then I'll ask another one after you answering the first one.
I don't propose that the name has to be changed, because it's very, very popular name now. I mean, it's also, I mean, people want to forget about this past of, I mean, connection with slavery, and they want to give a new, I mean, story, connection with this stock market failure. But of course, I mean, one can try to overcome these kind of things by blanketing upon it. But the history one should not forget, and one should remember it. And we should reassure ourselves. And, you know, in the dark side of history, our own history is always to be remembered very well. And we should think about it so that we should not repeat that mistake. And we should, you know, find solutions for the misery that we have bestowed upon these people. And we have to see to it that the people who were taken as slaves and their next generations are integrated to the mainstream society. That's the reassurance we want, not by a superficial change of the name. I mean, it has a different meaning now. It's a marketing festival now. One can go ahead with that, but one should at least give a thought to the idea that there shall not be any racial discrimination. There shall not be any discrimination on the basis of people's origin or their background, or any kind of discrimination of any sort has to end in this world. And we need a society where people are treated with dignity and with the respect, no matter what race or what community or what society or what language or what age group or what kind of ailment they have or what kind of financial status they have. People are people, and everyone has their dignity of life, and that has to be respected. That's what we have to remember during Black Friday, in my opinion.
May I ask another one?
Please.
So India, did we practice slavery? As far as I know, we did. This is true? Like selling people and buying people, mostly Adivasis.
If you're meaning about the kind of slavery that exists in modern India, even in many remote places, yes, there are reports that though slavery is officially not, I mean, legal any part of India, slavery is still being practiced in many parts of India, especially in the rural parts of India. And there are reports and reports about the kind of direct and indirect slavery that still exists in the tribal belt. Not only in India, in many other parts of Asia, you can see that. In Africa, in Congo, you can see slavery. It's still existing.
I had one more, but I don't know.
Come on.
Let me.
Yeah.
Okay, I went and bought this Friday iPhone 13. That is the latest generation. What I had was 12th generation. So they charged me $88 tax and plus $100. So I'll get a new generation 13, the latest. Then I go to a store and exchange my old phone. They will take it. I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to do. My 12th generation that I want. In this case, you are saying we are not saving anything. This is what you think. This is just a gimmick. Matter of fact, in my family, we took 2 of them. We have 4 iPhones and 2. We did the deal like this. So what do you think? We are cheated, or
I mean,
what's your opinion?
Marketing techniques are not, you cannot call it cheating. I mean, market is like that. You have to sell a product and the price is what the buyer feels comfortable. If I feel good that this is a price I have to give for that, I mean, that's how the prices are decided. I mean, if what's the production cost is not what the actual price is, I would consider something valuable and I'm willing to pay money for that. If I don't consider something valuable, I would not spend money on that. If I feel comfortable, that's it. That's the value of the whole thing. So if you're happy, I mean, there is nothing wrong in that. That's how every product is. Everything in life or anything in life, who decides the value of it? I mean, the person who wants to have it thinks that, well, it worth this money. And this is a big success if I get it at a lesser price. If you're happy, that's how market is. It is not cheating. That's the principle of market. But nice to hear it from the United States of America about the Black Friday. Thank you very much.
Okay, the thing is, if I didn't deal this time, my generation told me tossed out. It's not worth for the 14th generation. So if I have to do it, I have to do it this time. That's the trick behind it. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your patience and answering my concerns. Thank you very much.
All right. So next we have A.B. Abraham with us.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
There is a Sakshi apologist in Kerala. They are saying that the Europeans liberated the slaves. Is it right in all the parts of the world, whether the Europeans and the missionaries liberated slaves in the name of Jesus Christ? Then another point is that Black Friday is the last Friday of November. Sometimes it comes to the 5th Friday. So there is a correction for your talk. Anyway, it is an excellent talk. You just answer my question about the liberation of slaves by Christian missionaries.
Black Friday is normally the Friday after Thanksgiving Day. That's how it's calculated. Now, that the Christian missionaries liberated the slaves is one of the best jokes I could hear around this time. In fact, in Botswana or many parts of Africa, it was the Christian missionaries who initiated and blessed these slaves. And I have a wonderful picture, which shows how cruel these missionaries were sometimes. When a young boy of 9 years was hanged because his father did not bring enough wheat as promised, he was hanged. And I have a picture of missionaries blessing the hanging by reading a part of the gospel. So it's generally said that as the famous Tanzanian statement, that first ship came with Bible, people came with Bible. And at the end of the day, they all came with Bible in their hands. And later, the Bible was in our hands and our land was with them. They gave us the Bible and took away our land. The African land was stolen away by the people who occupied the land. And instead, they gave them the Bible. That's how the Africans see it. So it's comfortable to sit somewhere and claim that slavery was ended by the missionaries. In fact, the modern day slavery was initiated in many parts by the missionaries. And the missionaries came and gave them Bible and imprisoned them or enslaved them in belief at one side and allowed their masters to get them as real owners of the land, and they were made prisoners or slaves in their own land. The whole of Africa became a center of exploitation, with the missionaries first coming with the Bible and then helping the landowners to occupy the land and got them converted and they became workers in their own land. That's the history of Africa, which is officially said by many of the former head of the states of Africa, and including, Neirera and many other people have been speaking about this great experience of coming with the Bible and giving us the Bible and taking away our land. And in Europe, the major campaign against slavery was in Britain, and that was initiated by the liberals of Britain. In Britain, the liberals have been the champions against slavery. There was no Christian missionary. There was no Christian missionary in Britain. Missionaries were sent out to other places to convert those people, like these people who claim about the great powers of the missionaries. They were all sent to Asia and Africa and other places. But in Europe, the slaves were in Europe, and they were liberated because the liberals have been asking for it, and the human rights movement has been working for them. There was no missionary role. Maybe there was an exceptional missionary somewhere, like for example, when Pope Pius XII was collaborating with Hitler, especially as Cardinal. Before becoming the Pope, there was at one side you could see that he was blessing Hitler, and on the other side they would say that we have saved the whole world from Nazism. Similarly, even at that time there were some priests who were supporting the movement to help Jews out of the situation. Similarly, there can be exceptions. Not that all missionaries who even took their job as there was no other possible way to reach out to other places. Many people have not been really interested in propagating Christianity, but use this opportunity to go to places like Herman Gundert. He came to India, for example, as a missionary. He was not interested in propagating Christianity, but he was interested in studying languages. And he has, what was his interest? Because that was an opportunity to go to other places. So they used this opportunity to go to places and do other things. So there were some missionaries who could do good things also. Not that all missionaries were bad, but the whole idea that my religion is to be imposed upon other people, and the people, like the slaves, say that the slavery was good and the masters were good. The people who are converted now say that, well, they came and saved us. Yes, they came and saved those people who wanted to be slaves, and instead they got whatever they wanted. The imperial power was there on India, it was in Africa, and India became a colony of the Britain. And many parts of Africa became just colonies of European countries. And that's what the missionaries initiated. And then if somebody claims that it was the missionaries who ended slavery, it's like one of the biggest jokes possible. Thank you. So now we move on to Clubhouse.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I think we can move on to Clubhouse now.
Hi. Thank you, Sanal, for your super presentation. Did you see where Sanal took us to? We now know the real history behind Black Friday. However, it's not as sunny as retailers might have you believe. Also, thank you, Shubhi. And hand raising option is open now. For your attention, participants and Clubhouse members, before we go ahead with the question segment, please join this group. The name is Rationalist. We always update you with more socially relevant topics for discussion. So if you are a member, you will be notified. We are opening the hand raising options now. It's already open, sorry. Participants can ask questions by raising their hands. Try to avoid too many statements, be specific on questions. You are allowed to ask follow-up question or a counter. Thank you. We are waiting for hand raising and I don't see anyone raise their hands. Yeah.
Deepti, can I ask, say something?
Of course, help.
Yeah, no, actually, personally, I'm feeling really bad and guilty because my son reached in Europe 2 months back and he was actually waiting for Black Friday for his shopping and we didn't think much about the history of the Black Friday. This session was actually an eye-opener and very informative, and at the same time now we will not celebrate Black Friday happily. We will always remember about the sad history of Black Friday for sure. Thank you very much for reminding us the history of Black Friday. Thank you, Sanal, once again. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good to know that. I mean, one could see the other side of the reality. Yes. If one wants to,
I think people,
yeah,
everybody's, I think, happy with their presentations. There is not much questions.
but one could discuss also. One could.
Okay. I think until then, I would just unmute.
It should be one Madhu. Madhu is on the Madhu, and there are people here.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, you can continue.
Madhu, you may ask a question.
Sir, actually, I have a different question. It's not on this topic.
I think we should limit to the topic now, unless it's, I mean, very, very important.
Okay.
Because otherwise we'll be taken totally away from the whole thing that we've been discussing. Yes. Disha, do you have to make a comment?
No, Saptarshi can ask questions. Saptarshi may.
Hello?
Yep.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Sir, it was very nice to know about this thing because the other side of Black Friday and slavery. So here in India, we sometimes wrongfully say that slavery did not exist in India. So do you think because slavery means deprivation of basic human rights and making other people do things against their will. So do you think the Dalit people in our society during the long history, when they were outcasted from society and they were made to do many things against their will, they were actually can be considered as slaves to, maybe not personal slaves, but slave to the upper caste or slave to the society? What is your view on that?
Yeah, the crisis of the caste deprivation in India is perhaps graver than slavery, because there was no way that you could come out of it. It was out of your birth, I mean, as you all know. And for it remained for several centuries. There was no way that you could get out of it because it's connected to your birth and what kind of work you can do. For example, if a slave, if one, Saptarshi, if you can off your microphone, there's an echo coming there.
Okay.
If for a slave, if you show your capacity, you may get a different work. You could show your expertise and you could do some other work. For a person who is deprived because of the caste system, for example, a person who would be, carrying the human excretia as a profession. I mean, they have no other option in their life. The only job that they could do was the caste profession that they would do. A person who would skin the dead animal as a caste profession would do only that. He cannot do any other work. And if one changes the work, that's against the order of the law. So that was harder than the modern day slavery, because slavery, yes, you are caught and you are imprisoned. You are sold sometimes. Your master changes. Here there is no master. You are a prisoner of the situation, though you have no one master, but there are several masters, and you are sometimes owned by other people, but you cannot even go closer to the person because there is untouchability at that time. And also, I don't know, in Bihar, there was selling of slaves, which was happening even in the 18th century. I know for sure, I come from Kerala. In Kerala, selling of human beings in the marketplace was existing, till very recently. It ended, something like, less than 200 years back only it ended with a declaration. People were, you could not come closer to a person of the upper caste, a certain feet closer, then you could be killed for that. And you had no option, you have no way to go out of it. and you could be caught, you could be brought into marketplace, you can be auctioned and sold as a real slave, like in many other parts of, in Europe or in Egypt or later in United States. Such kind of selling of human beings also existed in many parts of India. But caste system, and especially the untouchables down there, were worse than the slaves in many respects, because there was no way that they could come out of it, no way they could change their profession, no way they could improve their way of life, no way they could even expertise in something else and do some other thing. So that was another form of exploitation. We cannot really compare caste system and slavery, because these are two different systems. But caste system has its own very serious demerits and very serious repercussions on the whole society. And even now you see that, caste system has not gone completely. The deeper untouchability has gone down, but it still exists in different forms even at this moment. So you cannot compare the caste deprivation and slavery in one balance, because they are two different systems. You cannot say that one is better than the other or one is worse than the other. Both are really worse.
Thank you.
Should be over to Zoom. I think there are people who.
Yes. Okay. So the next person that we have is Sajeesh. I would just unmute.
Hello.
Yes, Sajeesh. Yeah.
Yes. I just make one comment on that regarding the. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Got it. I just want to make one comment on that. You have a very nice presentation. Actually, I was not aware about the Black Friday history. But just one comment. I forget about the quotation person who quoted that. I think it's an Anglican missionary or something. The Travancore, the slave condition of the Travancore slave is much worse than any African slave. It's said by a famous Anglican missionary statement. Actually, the condition here, it's just for the subsistence only they got the caste system. You clearly mentioned that your caste system and everything. Just for the subsistence they give the food and not for the work. But slaves, if the slaves have a good physique and all, they built for the good physique so that we can sell it in a higher price. That is a condition there in the African say. That's what they have a good fit. At least good built and all. But in the condition of our caste system, slavery is also is in Kerala. It is very pathetic here. And also some works by the Sanal Mohan and Vinil Paul's some writings are there, and they are from the Cochin. They are Porter. They are taken away to African countries, and all this history is there, and good writings are there. And also last mentioned point is that around our Kochi church, the church is used to keep the slaves there, and only one other than the church activity days, other days are 6 days are the slaves are kept, and one day there is a church activity. So that's the kind of a slavery we had in Kerala. Just to comment on that. Anyway, excellent talk.
Also, adding to that point, there were a lot of conversions in many parts of Kerala by the missionaries, especially the Anglican missionaries targeted the downtrodden people, the Dalits and other people, to be converted. One has to also say that one of the first novels in Malayalam language, which is known as Kadagavadam, the execution of the killer. That's the name of it. It's a Malayalam novel. That's about the untouchability that was prevalent in Kerala. And this Collins was a person, one has to acknowledge that Collins was an Anglican missionary, but he was more interested in the welfare of the people in connection with their caste system, but also was parallelly interested in converting them to Christianity. That was the major thing. They were promoted to stand against the deprivation, and converted them. But what happened at the end of the day, all the new converts to Kerala church by the missionaries and the campaigns, they became Christians, but they found in the new, why they became Christians? Because they were told that once they convert, they are out of the caste system. But they did not come out of the caste system. Instead, they found that they were new untouchables in the new structure. Because the Kerala Christians always believed that they were, especially the Syro-Malabar Church people, believed that they were the descendants of Brahmins. They had the caste supremacy feeling, and they wanted to have all Hindu traditions in their home and claim that they were upper caste, Christians. And even the converts during the Portuguese times, especially the community in the coastal area, who were the new converts, are not even now considered as equals to the Syro-Malabar Church in Kerala. Because they were, that was something like 500 years back they were converted. But still, their diocese and their churches are separate, and there are not even marriages between the Syro-Malabar Church people as well as the Latin Christians. The caste division is very seriously established there. But the later conversions to by the church missionary communities who are now in the CSI or in the CNI churches or the other new Protestant groups, they were all considered untouchables in the new system also. There were not even marriages happening. They all are Christians. But when you marry, when you look for a spouse, when you want a partner, you would be identified immediately with their caste origins 2 generations back or 3 generations back, and you will have to identify somebody from the same caste background. So caste system followed them after conversion. So missionaries used, of course, the caste system to attract people, to get them converted, but the caste followed in the new religion as well as. So therefore, there was no real change in their life. But on the other side, what you said rightly, in Travancore markets, in Kayankulam, in Mavelikara, and many of these markets, on the market days, on Fridays and Tuesdays, slaves were sold for a price, auctioned and sold. I don't know, many other parts of India had such an open marketing of slaves. That was formally banned by the Travancore king, but it existed till very recently. Thank you. Thank you very much for that contribution.
Okay, next we have a Zoom user with us. I would just...
Miss Helen, I appreciate your feeling for blacks, but don't get worried too much. Our leaders are really working hard to improve everything. So a lot have improved. There are high achievers, blacks in United States in high positions. Like Biden and everybody, all are working to stop systematic disparities. But you cannot do it in overnight. They are working. We have to improve the education system. But how can you, overnight to raise the standard of a kid? That had to be step by step. But your feelings, all of your feelings for the blacks, including me, we feel them. Don't think I am also considered as brown. Blacks and browns do have disparities. But it's not that bad. But it's been working. So I thank you, Miss Helen, the way you feel, and all my sisters and brothers in the Zoom. I think in your lifetime there will be a lot of changes, and this will happen. The one weapon is education. To educate everybody, you support them emotionally, even though you cannot give money, just to say a kind word and stay with them, things like that. Thank you. This is what I want to express behind all of us who live in the United States, I may say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. The spirit, especially mentioned by Helen, I would understand. Her son is in, I think he's in Europe studying there. And one feels, you may not be actually experiencing the kind of slavery that was existing earlier, but you have to remember it. You have to give your mind to it. You have to feel, you have to understand, and you have to keep on reminding you about what happened in the past so that history never repeats in that form in another time of our life.
Okay. Deepti, do you have more questions?
No, should be. I think we done now.
Okay.
If you have anything.
All right. So I think I would let's conclude this, and I would like to thank Sanal sir for telling us the other side of what Black Friday is. And thank you everybody for your time. And as Deepti said, we have more socially relevant topics every Sunday. So hopefully I'll see you all next week. And goodbye.